I mean, I can. Okay. What we're going to try to do today is show how you can trim off finish if you have imperfections or if you have lumps. Recently online I saw somebody that said he had a big problem with lumps and didn't know how to handle it. There was a lot of suggestions. This is just one way of doing it. It's the way I like to do it because it's faster and usually I get a really good product out of it. But again, like anything in rod building, there's several different ways you can approach any subject. This just happens to be the way I like to do it. I do have to warn though that since you're working with an X-Acto blade, or in my case I use a scalpel, you have to be very careful and do things in small degrees. Don't try to cut off a huge clump, do it in little bits and pieces. As you should be able to see on the video, somewhere here on this light line underneath, there's a couple of little divots, like a little, I want to call them pimples, where the thread was frayed, and when I put the finish on, it kind of popped up and made these two little bumps. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now turn it over to where I can work on it and try to trim it off with my blade. Okay, so I bring it around here and I can see it now, and what I do is I lay my blade on flat and then just try to cut off the top. See that little piece came off? Go around, do the rest of it. Little pieces at a time. You don't want to cut into the fray and make it fray again. Try to get the pieces off of the wrap so that when you put the finish on, you're not putting finish over the top of the little pieces. Sometimes you can use those little CO2 blowers that you use on computers. Now there's more flaws in this wrap on the top. I think you might be able to see it on the camera that there's big lumps on the side. Again, it's the same process. I'm going to try to just shave off the top layers of these lumps to try to bring them down a little closer to normal and flat. You see these marks it's leaving? It's no big deal because once you put finish on, it'll get glossy again. Some people like to do this work with sandpaper. That's a good way of doing it too. I find that I like to do this first to get the bigger chunks off and get faster progress, and then maybe come back over it and do it with the sandpaper. Okay, there's no need for you to watch me do this. What I'll do now is turn this off and go back to come back to it when I'm ready to put finish on it and show you what it looks like. Okay? Okay, now you'll see that there's areas where I've done all the cutting all the way around the rod, little dimples that I've flattened out. I don't get them all the way off because I don't want to get down to the thread, but I have taken quite a bit off, and I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but it has drastically reduced those lumps, at least from what I can see here. One more little one I want to work on here, but pretty much I'm ready to rock and roll with another coat of finish. What I'm going to do, what I don't normally do myself, is I'm going to use some very, very fine sandpaper. This is 220, I think, because that is another option for reducing this stuff down. If you're going to do it with sandpaper, you can use a block, or you can, I just like to use my hand. I really have a lot of faith in these self-leveling finishes. Most of the two-part epoxies are really similar in nature. There's a couple that are a little better than others, but they all have similar characteristics, and the way I put finish on, they all react very closely. I'm going to do a little sanding, but I'm going to just sand part of this and then leave it part of it unsanded, so that when I show you later on what it looks like when this next coat of finish dries, you'll be able to see there's no difference between the unsanded and scuffed areas and the areas that haven't been touched. So I'm going to do a little sanding. I'm trying to stay right in the areas where the biggest amount of lumps are. Just trying to bring the lumps down, not the flat finish. And come around the rod here a little bit. And again, you have to be very careful that you don't get down to the thread layer, because you don't want to create more problems for yourself. Okay, now I've done that. I'm going to do two things. One is I've got these things that they use for computers, the dusters. I'm going to blow that off. And then I have a very, very secret solution that I put on my fingers. It's called spit. And then I just wipe it off with my fingers. You see what we have now is it's scuffed a little bit, and you can see areas where it's shiny. That's where we didn't do any sanding. Area on the back here that's completely untouched, and you can see that the lumps, you should be able to see that the lumps are drastically reduced. Now I'm going to stop for a while, mix up my finish, and then we'll put another coat of finish on this and see how it works out. Alright, now we've mixed up the finish, and I always tell people I do finish wrong. I think you can probably see there's a zillion bubbles in there. I don't worry about bubbles all that much, obviously, because I like to use an alcohol lamp, which allows me to burst the bubbles. This is the one I like to use. Seems to be, it's got this little spout at the top so you can direct a specific flame. I don't use it very much, but I do use the main part of it. And I know you're not supposed to do it. I do a lot of things that you're not supposed to do, but it works for me. I actually let the flame touch the finish. You just have to be real careful. Okay, so now I'm going to put my finish on this work that we did. I do everything by hand. Some people like to use tape on the ends to make it nice and smooth and even on the ends. These are handcrafted rods, so if I wanted it to look factory, I probably would do that. I kind of like the fact that I want to get close to perfection, but I want people to know this is done by hand. I've actually, now that I'm retired, gone back to doing everything by hand rollers. You see this, I'm turning this by hand. I lay it on pretty thick, it bubbles everywhere. I'm moving it from side to side. These are all things that have been somewhat criticized in the past, but they work for me. And if, I'm not telling anybody to change, but if what you're doing isn't working for you, try one of these other methods. Try my method or somebody else's. Okay, you can see all the bubbles. I can still kind of see the lumps a little bit in there, not that bad. I'm going to end up putting another coat of finish over this anyway. But now I'm going to burst the bubbles. You see the bubbles? Can you see the bubbles in the black? Yeah, okay. there's bubbles here on the end in the black, and what I do is I just run this across while I'm spinning it. Do 3 or 4 laps. I've already got most of the bubbles out, and then I'll let it cool down a little bit. Turn it by hand. One of the things that I like to do is I'll do it for a while now, is I start on the 0 axis and I count to 15. And then I'll go to the 180 axis and I'll count to 20. 15 or 20. While it's real thin like now, because the heat was on it, maybe stay with 15. But eventually what you want to do is you want to get this to where you're putting it on the 0 axis for a minute and the 180 axis for a minute. I found that a real good way to do it, you see how flat that's looking already, is to increase it incrementally. Okay, let's say I did it for 15 seconds. And then I turn it here on the 180 degree axis, and now I'll do it for 20 seconds. Then I'll turn it back to the 0 axis and do it for 25 seconds. Then back to the 180 for 30 seconds, and so on and so forth. We continue in a progression until you get to 1 minute. Once you get to 1 minute, then I like to leave it 1 minute, turn it, 1 minute, turn it, 1 minute. Okay? That's how I like to put my finish on. Another thing that I do is I'll go through and I'll look along the light line. I've changed the angle of my head to look along the light line, and I look for like little fibers or hairs, and I pick them out with a pair of tweezers. When I get one, then I run the tweezers over the flame, then look along the rod again. Pretty much, I've got most of them out here. I know I'm going to have one more coat, so I'm not getting too AR about it. What I do though, is after I've kind of done the turning by hand for a while, I usually go back and I redo the finish. This is the same finish I mixed up a little while ago. Now my first coat of finish I usually thin with acetone. Again, not one of the things that's often talked about or recommended by many, but it works for me, so as long as it keeps working for me, I'm going to keep doing it. Again, I'm going back and forth to flatten this with the brush first. Again, we've got a batch of bubbles here. Now I'm going to go back over it again with the flame. And you can see that flame is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually touching the finish. You got to be quick. I guess it's like walking on fire. You can walk on fire, but you can't stand on it. And it's the same thing with the finish. You should be able to see in the camera how this finish is really starting to flatten out. Way different than when we started. Now again, there'll be one more coat of finish going on it, so I'll have one more chance of flattening it even more. So now I'm going to go into my routine of 0 and 180 degree axis, and then I'll put it on the dryer. When it's dry, I'll bring it back out again, take some more video of it, show you what it looks like, and then again after the final coat. So that's it for this part. I'm going to put a fishing rod up there in a little while, and maybe do it one more time showing you how to put the finish on. So that's it for now. So here's the end result of what we were doing in the earlier part of this vid. You can see that it's all straightened out now and leveled out. See if I can get a little closer. Probably best seen in the shadow of the wrap itself, because the shadow's nice and straight, so you know that the lumps and bumps are gone. I'm going to roll it around a little bit just to show you that it's the same all the way around. There's no real deep areas. So that's just another method of kind of fixing up our little boo-boos and stuff that we get in rod building if the rod falls out of the dryer, or if the electricity goes off in the house, or whatever, and we end up with drips. That's just one more way of doing it, along with sanding and the other methods that you see on different boards. Just wanted you to see that shaving it is a possibility too, if you got good steady hands and want to get it done in a hurry. So now I'm going to try to take some pictures of the actual tigers that I've got on this sample. There's about 5 or 6 on this sample. I don't know if we're going to be able to catch the movement, but I'm going to see what I can do about that. I may end up cutting this out at the end. Okay, now I'll take some pictures with stills and show what we got on bloody decks, along with the colors that I used. Okay, just one more little quick tip. I saw online recently somebody was having problems with one of the foam type jigs like I make, and some are made on the East Coast. This happens because there's a twist in thread, and it's like a little saw, and when you pull it out lengthwise this way on the jig, or out this way, what happens is it's like a little wire saw. It just starts cutting a hole in the bottom. There is a way to fix that. You can purchase living rubber for making bass jigs, or just buy a bass jig and take the living rubber off of it. Living rubber comes raw in a tape like this, and it's pre-scored, so all you have to do is take one little piece, separate it out, and it's really small. If I can do it after 4 cups of coffee. There's one little piece I'm pulling off. Very stretchy. And what you do is you put your jig up, find the slots that are loose, take the living rubber, stretch it, put it down to the base of the slot, like that, all the way down to the bottom. That's usually where the wear is worst, and then just trim it off. Because the rest of the foam is good and vital, the rubber will be held in place and it'll fill that gap at the bottom. Just go through all your slots like this, and you'll make it almost like brand new again. You have to keep an eye on how you pull your thread out, but usually this will fix it up pretty good and give you another few more years use out of your jig. Something else you should remember when using this type of jig is, rather than pulling the thread in like that and then pulling it through, which causes the damage, try putting it in, and when you pull it out, pull it straight up like this. In, and then to pull it out, you pull it straight up. Hopefully those hints will help you a little bit, and if you're having trouble tracking down this living rubber, I have tons of it. So if you'll get a hold of me either by email or mail me a self-addressed stamped envelope, I'll put a couple of pieces in for you to fix up your jigs. You can usually find my address anywhere online, especially on Bloody Decks. Okay, that's it for today.